We're going to go ahead and we will get started. The good news is if there are people who straggle in, the only thing you'll really miss are my remarks and the introductions, and you'll get the substance. My name's Rod Smith. I direct the Center for Constitutional Studies, and I was not originally assigned in any way to this panel, but we lost a speaker toward the last, and I am filling in, but I'm largely going to do it as a moderator, which will give us more time for questions, because I think we'll have serious questions raised during the course of what we're discussing. What we have here with RFRA as we look forward, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, as we look forward, there's some very serious rights and interests in conflict. And I think, and one of the essays this morning by one of the students indicated this, is that it's very important that we respect those various interests. And what are some of the rights and interests? Well, you have the right of religious liberty. For those that were at the lunch, you would have seen some examples of that, of religious conscience. It's that sense that one's duty to her God requires a certain activity. I think often in that regard of a young basketball player that I knew when he was in high school. I would visit his family, and he was going to a Catholic school, and he was a very, very fine basketball player, and he was the center of his team. He was 6'8" tall. And they had made their way to the semifinals of the state championship. And they were going to play on Sunday. And he, as a matter of faith, had never played on what was his Sabbath, Sunday. And so he announced that he was not going to be able to play. Because they knew him, his teammates were disappointed, but supportive, even though it probably meant, and in fact did, that they were not going to win the game. He also respected them. He didn't feel like he could use what talents he had, because he thought in some measure they were a gift and they were something he'd worked for, and he wasn't going to use it, that ability, on Sunday. But he did put on a sport coat and a tie and sat with his team and supported them on the bench. He tried to find a way to show his respect for them. And then at the end, at the banquet that year, they paid particular honor to him. The priest that they supervised the school paid particular tribute to him and to his teammates who were willing to support him in that exercise, even at the expense of not proceeding in all likelihood to the state championship game. Now, often that's true of religious liberty, and it's true of so much of liberty, particularly if it's some kind of minority interest. The public largely doesn't understand, and you have to, and there's going to be repercussions. You pay a price when you exercise rights many times. Well, implicated in these cases as well are women's rights. A number of the cases have dealt with contraceptives and other kinds of issues, and whether businesses would supply those contraceptives or abortifacients, and the people on the religious side say, "Oh, you can't do this because it violates our duty to God and to humanity. But by the same token, women and their right to choose, which is a very significant right. I would always, when I would teach Roe versus Wade, have students say, well, I'd have some students say, well, where's that right come from? And I said, it's in the 9th Amendment to the 4th Amendment. I particularly like the 4th, that you can't have a search or seizure. They couldn't even come in the curtilage, couldn't even come into somebody's property, and yet we're going to say that the government can come in and tell a woman how she's going to use her body. So it's a very significant interest, and I learned it probably most emphatically when I started teaching. I was the faculty advisor to the Right to Life group, and I wore a little pin of 2 little tiny feet, and I wore it to work one day, and my dear friend and colleague Marcia O'Kelly took me aside and said, Rod, would you, as a favor to me, take the pin off? And then she proceeded to tell me a very heart-wrenching experience that she had, and that every time she looked at that, it enhanced her pain. I took off the pin, but the quid pro quo for that was the 2 of us went on public radio and had a very serious discussion about the issue itself, and a respectful one. She'd always been reluctant to do that, as so many are today, because when you get to the fringe, it's an all or nothing game always. Then on the LGBTQ rights, they're very serious. I was hired not long ago, not here, but at another institution for a job. One of the faculty members who opposed my being hired asked to meet with me afterwards. And he is a wonderful gay man. And he explained to me that he had lost the love of his life, his partner. He had sat there while he died of AIDS. And he saw me as an affront. We talked for an hour and a half that day. I tried to embrace at the end. He didn't, couldn't. He said, not now. But Ben and I are best of friends now. We do embrace. We do respect one another. So, and then there are governmental interests that will come into conflict. And then we're going to have a conflict. Well, what about if it's a private right? Somebody doing it privately. They're going to throw a party and tell someone, some group, they're not going to be able to come, but it's a private party at their home. That's one level. But what if you're in the marketplace and there are laws that regulate the marketplace, anti-discrimination and other laws? What do you do in that context? How far does the freedom? It's all of this is sort of a continuum. And then on the other side, on the other end of that convention, you have pure government sorts of activities that are clearly that are government. And then also law, there's another continuum I want to introduce, and then I'm going to introduce the speakers. Here's the continuum: friends and kindness, respect, toleration, marginalization, disdain, and enemies. Think of that continuum. My friend Sandy Levinson, I was once able to give a tribute to him, and my tribute was, what would the Constitution look like among friends? He was culturally, And his family was very Jewish, and he grew up in North Carolina. But he always indicated that he appreciated his friends, that his friends cared enough about him that they would share their beliefs. And that they also cared enough about him that when he didn't accept the beliefs, they still respected him and they remained friends. Friends, that side. Well, frankly, the law is not very good at promoting friendship. Then the next over is respect. The law can and should do that, is find ways, and we as a people should find ways to show respect for those views with which, particularly those we disagree with. Professor Scott this morning was terrific in his presentation with the essay and saying one of the things we as scholars seek to do is make sure that all sides are discussed so that we can make some kind of wise resolution, as respectful and fair as it can be. Then you've got toleration. As I said this morning, I don't care much for toleration. It's a 17th century concept. Toleration means I'm better than you, but I'll tolerate you. That's not respect. Then next is marginalize, and we see much of that today. If we disagree, that's what goes on in the media all the time. If we disagree with someone, we marginalize them. We don't look at them. We just search for the people that say what we believe in, and then we marginalize them. And sadly, that marginalization sometimes turns to disdain and even sometimes hatred. And we cannot, in my view, long survive as a nation with that. Well, those very kinds of interests come into conflict in this area. And so I just can't think of two better people to help us wrestle with this kind of conflict. What do you do when someone's religious liberty right? The cake maker is serious. He's sincere. He believes that. He's losing a lot of business. He is facing a backlash for his belief. That's real. That gay couple that has been kicked and beat upon so much also, it's like any one of us, if we walked into a business and they said, I don't want to serve you, and said it for a very personal reason. These are real tensions. And we, as a people, must be equal to this.